Hey world, this is it, the most driven podcast on the radio. Welcome to The Driven, a podcast brought to you by the kick-ass nutrition science team at MDrive. MDrive is all you need and all you need to know in the world of more energy, more focus, more stamina, and more drive. I'm your host, Rick Baroff, longtime ultra-endurance athlete and MDrive ambassador. We're going to talk it up with a wealth of amazing, passionate, dedicated, and driven guys in all walks of life. So get ready to be motivated and inspired. It's The Driven Podcast. This week's show is full of hearty, fun nostalgia for super fans of the 90s and features tall tales of living your dreams for any kid from age 9 to 99, because we're talking with the one and only high-energy Tony Horton P90Xing comic book writer, cartoonist, and graphic novelist with no plan B, Judd Winick. Where have you heard that name before? Yes, Judd is a former star of everyone's favorite 90s reality show, The Real World San Francisco, which helped launch not only an amazing career in writing and drawing tales of superheroes, aliens, precocious kids, grumpy clowns, and even trailblazing real people, but also a blissfully awesome lifelong team-up with his real-world co-star turned wife, Pam Ling. While we'll talk about his jock-like backstory and some juicy bits of stardom, Judd is a super positive, finding truth through comedy writing, regular guy from Long Island who works at his craft every day, day after day, through all the same ups and downs we all go through in life. In fact, you could say his tale starts with having to move back in with his parents as a full-fledged adult after some failures set him back to zero. But ultimately, he never lost sight of his childhood dream of becoming a cartoonist and never lost the positive drive to keep on pursuing that dream without a tightrope or a bat rope until it came true. Ready, set, look out, an alien! No, it's just super cartoonist Judd Winick, now on the Driven Podcast. 3, 2, 1. Hello, MDrive Nation. We've got a fun one today with the ringer. Yes, another old friend of mine, Judd Winick. Judd, hey, how are you today?
I'm good, sir. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Good. Absolutely. It's been a hot minute since we've caught up, but I'm excited to chat, excited to hear what life is like on the creative side of the entertainment that buoys us through so much of our lives. So let's jump right in. Inquiring minds want to know, what are you up to these days? What are you working on?
Well, I am still a professional cartoonist. I've got the best job in the whole world. I make things up and then I draw them. So I live like a 10-year-old. It's interesting to have this conversation pre-pandemic, during pandemic, and post-pandemic, because work life has not really changed that much for me. It seemed like in the conversations that I've been having for years, like a lot of folks have caught up to, the way I've been rolling, which is, working at home. I've always worked at home.
Right on. You're onto something.
Yeah,
a long time ago.
No. But there's been a bit of advice to go around, as I explained to you, like, listen, working at home, it does mean you work at home, though. You get up in the morning, you do a little bit of exercise, you shower, you put on actual clothes. Like, I do not work in sweats. I never have done this. Like, I think it is as informal as I get as I wear slippers. Aside from that, every day you dress, you get ready for work. But more on point. So my day-to-day. I'm currently doing a graphic novel series for Random House called Hilo. I have just finished the first draft of the 10th book in the series. So first one came out in 2015. It's been chugging along. For those who don't know, it's an action-adventure series geared for kids, graphic novels, big old comic book, and thankfully it has done very, very well. so
awesome. And it leads into a big thing that we like to talk about here, motivation. You've been doing this, a couple, 3 decades now, straight. You figured out how to go from bed to work onto the same roof every day for that long. 3 decades. That's a long time. So how do you stay motivated every day, all day? Do you have a routine? I know you have kids. That's often bad for routines, but what happens when your feet hit the floor?
It's always been a routine. It's interesting that it's funny you bring that up. I guess pre-pandemic, everyone would always have the same response when I said I worked at home. They would say, "Oh man, I can never do that. The idea of working at home, I would never get anything done." And I would just say the same thing. I said, you do it if you have to, if that's the gig.
Yeah.
You can't just not
Yeah.
do nothing. But I've never been one who waited for the muse to strike. I've never been like, well, let me see what the day has. It's always been getting up early. Well, what it is now, I am up even before we had kids. I am up early. I exercise in some way, shape, or form. For a while, I was doing Tony Horton's 30-minute
Right
workout.
on.
Transitioned to actually using a rowing machine because my knees have
Uh,
started to go.
sorry.
A little too much
That's all
information
right.
there,
All right.
but I highly recommend for those who can and should and can't get out. The Tony Horton Beachbody 30-minute workout
Right on.
was amazing for my wife and I. We became addicted to it. She's still doing it. Again, I've transitioned out because my knees have started to go, and I'll probably go back to it. I love the idea. It was like 30 minutes a day, and it would kill you. That's the other thing I also tell people. Like, it is not easy.
No.
It is a different workout, different levels, different tracks every week, every day, and it is brutal for 30 minutes, which mentally was good for me because who can't do 30
Get after
minutes? And that was the thing.
Right on. Inspiration through perspiration. How often did you do it? Five days a week? Six?
Six. I think day 6 is what kills people. It's like, no, you got to do your Saturday as well. And it works. It was great. It was good for my mental well-being. And it's, for me, I've always been, I need to start the day with exercise, not finish the day. It gets my mind and body going. And by the time I am sitting and ready to be creative and do my stuff, it's just the right kind of, I can get all airy-fairy about it and talk about it being balanced, but I like to just check that box. I like to be done with the physical exercise, and I know it's better for you overall. And that's always been how I started my day. Even before when I had to go to the gym, but back at the table or the desk to start doing the real work. And whether I'm writing, which is the hard part, and trying to come up with stuff, or whether I'm just drawing, which is the fun part, which is like play, which is, it's almost criminal. How much fun
criminal.
A lot of my days are spent, half watching TV and listening to podcasts or audiobooks while I draw.
Like most.
And that's my job. And I'm very, very grateful for it. But yeah, so that is usually at the desk by, if I'm not there by 9 a.m., I'm a little ticked off, and I go until the kids get home at 4-ish, and then then the drivings around happen.
Right.
But that is it.
Right on.
And I try to tell people that's, even if you're creative, that I don't think you necessarily have the luxury of sitting around and waiting for the ideas to hit you. It's important to put in some kind of schedule. Whether you're doing it full time, whether you're doing it part time, whether you're trying to break into doing something more creative with your life, you have to carve out a certain amount of time and try and make it happen. And even if you're spending just an hour a day trying to write something, make something or whatnot, and it doesn't quite work out, that's okay. It's a day of that hour that you try doing it is incredibly important.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. I absolutely believe there's something to that phrase, getting the creative juices flowing, and it's often through literally moving your butt, right? Yeah. I know it does for me. I get many epiphanies, many ideas and visions while I'm out running. Not all due to dehydration of running long distances, It's just part of it.
I think you could physically, I know actually they've done studies that having folks try to come up with creative thought when they're sitting still versus when they physically put them walking on a treadmill. They've all done better when they're walking on a treadmill. Physically moving for the creative process is incredibly important. So yeah, often when I am exercising, often when I'm like, I know that like I'm writing, this is writing time, like I got to get out of here and I'm walking. It doesn't mean I'm going to put a podcast in my ear and like going to go walk around for an hour and a half. It means like, no, I'm going to try and focus on what I'm trying to think of and move around a bit and see what happens. And it's funny how many times I'm sitting there and I'm trying to work out an idea or a joke's not coming together. And to be incredibly crass, like get up to go take a leak. And the physical act of getting up from my table, walking upstairs, going in, and suddenly like, oh, yeah, you know what? If I do that thing, okay. And I've worked it out in the 3-minute walk to the restroom and back.
Yeah.
So it's really, I wouldn't even necessarily call it my process, but I know sometimes it's not working. It's time to get out of here.
Yeah. All right, so let's go back to the beginning. How did we get here? Awesome that you've been this successful and you've gotten to this successful
Sure.
place. But let's talk about that awkward, long-haired kid in high school who actually wasn't so awkward. Could maybe even call you a jock in high school, maybe? I think you ran track or some other stuff, right? What did you do? What was Judd High School like?
I was the interesting combo of being the long-haired artist and I did theater, but I played soccer, I ran track, um, and was as much as you could possibly call someone a jock. I was. I mean, I was doing I was doing sports every season, on top of again doing like all my long-haired artist stuff. Um, and I always thought it always served me well just having a little bit of, I don't know. I would call it just a little bit of diversity in your life in
Yeah.
that way.
Yep.
Um, just because I think if I'd just been a kid who was like locked up with my books and my comic books and television, I don't think it would have served me as well as just trying to be a little bit out in the world a little bit more.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
and it held up. I mean, it held up in that way.
Okay, so how much of this cartoon business was a passion versus an actual real career idea? When did you say or when did you think that you really, really wanted to pursue this? Like this is something that I can do for the rest of my life.
I was always the cartoonist
Hmm.
since I was little. I guess I was about. I mean, when we're kids, all of us, we all draw. All of us, we all draw pictures. I could always draw a little bit better.
Hmm.
Everyone's good at something. Some kids run faster. Some kids are good at math. I could always
Mhm.
draw a little bit better. And I was always encouraged by my parents to keep drawing. They always liked what I did.
Mhm.
And when I was like about, I don't know, 7 or 8 years old, um, Garfield came out,
Hmm.
and I just fell in love with Garfield.
Hmm. Hmm.
Garfield might not hold up. It's been a long time,
Mhm.
but when I was a kid, the original strips actually still were really, really funny, and they're
They
actually
were.
really good for a kiddo. And I went bananas for Garfield, and I decided when I was like 8 or 9 years old, that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to do a syndicated comic strip, and it began by
Wow.
ripping off Garfield. Uh, I was doing my own comic strip about a grumpy, overweight cat named Marvin. Clearly, totally different from Garfield in every way, shape, or form, except it wasn't.
Uh,
And I started doing that. And then when I was 13, I discovered Bloom County,
mhm.
um,
Mhm.
which then I started ripping off Bloom County.
Uh-huh.
And all along the way, I was really lucky that one, my parents were always enormously supportive.
Nice.
I remember for as long as I can possibly remember when I told my folks I wanted to be a cartoonist, they never said that's a good hobby
Hmm.
or that'll be something to fall back on, or that's fine after you go to law school. I never heard that. They always were really, really supportive,
Nice.
and and let me and I, they basically gave me as much, you know, air and sunlight and water as I needed to be a cartoonist, which basically
Very
meant
cool. Very
like
cool.
paper and supplies and time to draw and encouragement. I was very, very lucky,
Right
and
on.
teachers.
Yeah. So did you ever have a plan B? What's plan B? Plan B.
No. No, no, it
No.
was really it could have been more than a little problematic because no, I did not. I've been very, very lucky in that um, one, having the support of your folks. Two, I grew up in the suburbs, and I was lucky enough that I went to a really amazing school district who always had art
Hmm.
in all the schools.
Mhm.
It is criminal that all of our schools don't have art and music
Yeah.
and theater.
Yeah.
Still, just as kids have access to it.
Yeah.
I was really, really lucky in that way. So there was never really a need for a plan B because
Hmm.
at every benchmark I was okay in doing it. Um, Going from high school and doing a comic strip in high school and uh, getting better at it, learn to paint, learn to sculpt, learn to draw, and then going off to college.
College. Yes. So I know that you were the cartoonist of record at the Michigan Daily in the early
Yeah.
90s because, well, I was reading it back then. And that's, in fact, how we know each other from our days in Ann Arbor. Go Blue. Was that your first paying gig or what was
Well,
it? Was
no.
that
My
not
first
paid
pay
or?
No, you don't get paid for working for the student paper. That is a that is a privilege unto itself, sir. No one gets paid. This is not a paying gig.
College.
Um, but well, you know what? The first paying gig I had, I think I was about 14, and I was doing my own comic strip, like a single panel kind of Far Side like comic strip,
Hmm.
just for me. And my dad, being my dad, being awesome, my dad took my comic strip, went to my local paper, and said, "Hi, my son does this comic strip. I think it's great. I think you guys should publish it." And crazily enough, the editor of the paper said, "You know what? I think it's pretty good too, and I think we will." And so my
Wow.
local paper started publishing my comic strip weekly, once a week, and I was paid $5 a
That's a
week,
lot.
and I was never more excited in my life than that. Um, so every
Yeah, that's
week,
a lot back then. $5 a lot back then.
it wasn't nothing, and every week I would go pick up my local paper, and there was my comic strip, and it was a lot. It was really a big thrill. Um, and then after that, a bunch of years later, when I was 18, and well, I should back up a little bit. Back in the day when I was deciding where to go to college, um, I'm stunned actually in hindsight that I had the forethought and just the reasoning and the logic behind this. I I made a choice about instead of going to an art school where I figured I would get a terrific art education, but I'd be surrounded by other long-haired artists. That I'd take the risk of going to a major university with a great art program. I actually was thinking that I wanted to do something that would allow me to have like a little bit more, not even a diverse
Hmm.
education. I just thought it'd be more important for me to be around other people than unlike myself. Not being going to school with 3,000 other artists, but maybe going to a university that had like 30,000 other people, all different
Yeah,
shapes and
yeah.
sizes. But the big but was I wanted to make sure that it had an excellent school paper.
Okay.
Uh,
Yeah,
because
nice.
my plan was I wanted to get a comic strip in the school paper like Gary Trudeau of
Mm,
Doonesbury did with the Yellow
okay.
Bulldog, and as Burke Breathitt did with Bloom
Mm,
County when he went to UT,
hmm.
um, and it was called Academia Waltz was his college comic strip. That's what I
Oh,
wanted to do. I wanted to follow in the footsteps of my heroes and do a college comic strip just like
right
them.
on. Well, I can say that pretty much the only reason I picked up the Michigan Daily, not that I didn't want to be an informed citizen, okay, maybe I didn't because it was college, was to read Nuts and Bolts, your comic strip. Yeah.
Thank you. Um, I've heard that a lot. It was funny, It was I about a year into like I guess our your freshman year, my sophomore year, is when it started to like really kind of take hold a little
Hmm.
bit. And when I would, it was a wonderful, inspiring, head expanding experience of meeting strangers. And at some point, like, yeah, I'm in the art school. Like, oh, what do you want to do? I want to be a cartoonist. And it would like come up like, no, I do the comic strip, nuts and bolts. Like, you're Judd Winick? It's like, oh my God. No, to have that crap at 19
Uh,
from other college students, it was probably detrimental. It was
detrimental.
probably a little bit too. Oh no, I had a very big head by the time we were graduating,
Yeah.
like incredibly big head, and it was I don't know if it was healthy, but I did a daily comic strip for 3.5 years.
Hmm.
I finally got the strip in there my second semester, my freshman year, and it was an incredible learning
Yeah.
experience because it was a significant amount of work. You had to keep doing it, whether it
Mm,
was good or not. You had to get in there,
yeah. Put in the time.
and it was a blast.
Right on. Yes. Well, okay. So all that said, there's just not too many jobs for professional cartoonists now, or especially back then, pre-internet. So what was the plan when you graduated from college? You walk across the stage, wherever. When you graduated from college, you were going to what?
I was very fortunate to have incredibly lucky breaks and then also to
Mm,
fail in a
mm,
colossal
mhm,
way. The lucky break happened my sophomore year at University of Michigan
mhm,
School of Art. I saw a flyer up on the wall that said, "Do you want to be part of the mentor
mm,
program?
mhm,
We can reach out to alumni who are in
mm.
your field and and set you
Ah,
up with them. Join the mentor program." So I went to the dean of the art school and said, "I want to talk to
mm,
Kathy Geisweit
mhm.
of the comic strip
Kathy.
Kathy." for those playing at home, the comic strip Kathy was one of the biggest comic strips in the country. It was right up there with Peanuts and Garfield and whatnot. Kathy was a graduate of the University of Michigan, and I went to the dean and said, "Yeah, I want to talk to Kathy," which he was met with like, "She went here." It's like, "She went here. She went to Michigan." It's like, just swear to God, she did. A couple of years after that, she would actually speak at graduation. But crazily enough, about 2 weeks later, like in no time at all, the dean reached out to me. He's like, "Hey, I spoke to Kathy Geiswhite. She'd love to talk to you." I was like, "Shut up." It's like, "Really?" He goes, "Yeah, no. She was incredible. She was wonderful. I told her all about you. You do a comic strip, you go here, and she'd love to talk to you." And so there I was. I had her phone number burning a hole in my pocket, and I called Kathy, and we started talking. Very long story short, she was wonderful. She was accommodating, and she immediately set it up and said, "Okay, look, send me your comic strips once a month. So photocopy them and send me what you got once a month, and we'll talk about it." And we did. And she had notes and she had thoughts.
Wow.
And then my senior year, Kathy just dropped on me, said, "So listen, I'm going to be meeting with the editor-in-chief at Universal Press Syndicate, my syndicate. I'm going to give him your comic strip."
Wow.
Like, what? It's like, "Yeah, I'm going to give him your comic strip. I'll tell him that I've been mentoring you and I think that they should syndicate you." Okay, which I thought was amazing unto itself. And then, crazily enough, about 3 months later, she said, "He's going to call you. They want to offer you a development deal." So Lee Salem at the Universal Press Syndicate offered me what was to be a development deal. This was a new thing for them. They weren't going to syndicate me. They were going to put me in development, which meant I was going to do my comic strip for about a year. And basically just do it in pencil, not fully finished, and send them like the roughs of it. We'd go over it. After about a year, then we would pursue syndication. So there was senior year of college, and everything had worked out the way it was supposed to. I did my college comic strip, and I got a deal with Universal Press Syndicate. And so all the ducks were lined up just the way it was supposed to, and it was awesome. So I graduated from school. I moved into a completely shithole apartment with my best friend Brad Meltzer. Brad Meltzer, real quick sidebar. If you're listening to this, pause this, go Google Brad Meltzer. Brad is a incredibly successful author of legal thrillers and children's books, and a one-time television host, and also the creator of the TV series Xavier Riddle. So Brad went on to do incredibly amazing things. So at the time, Brad was broke like I was. He was working on his first novel on spec, no publisher, and working at a magazine. So a couple of starving artists in Boston. I was doing my comic strip, sending it off to Universal Press Syndicate, working at a bookstore part-time. Everything was great. Then about 9 months into my development deal, Universal Press Syndicate turned around and told me that they did not feel that my work was up to the current competitive professional standards of syndicated comic strips. And they dropped me from my contract. And you could have just killed me. Because as I said, I had not met with a lot of adversity. I'd been very, very lucky. And so this was my first major kick in the teeth. Everything was lined up, was ready to go. I was going to get syndicated at 23 years old. And then they just dropped it on me that they didn't think I was good enough, and that was it. And from there, I moved back in with my mom and dad. I never had anything to fall back on. This is the moment where I probably need something to fall back on, but I didn't have anything. So I really didn't know what I was going to do next. I had moved back in the first of the early in the year, and I think I was planning on I might just head out to LA. I might hit up I thought maybe I'd hit Kathy Geiswhite up for some work. I thought maybe I'd couch surf. I had a few nibbles, but nothing really. And in that mix, when I'm sitting around not exactly sure what my next move is going to be, I was watching The Real World on MTV, and there was a commercial. Do you want to be on Real World 3 San Francisco? Send us a letter and a photo telling us why. And I had been a fan of the show, and I thought, why not? Because literally, what does one have to lose? case in point, I am now living with my parents with no prospects. Um, and so the way it
So I'll
worked
be in
though
reality.
is that they had like levels in tiers, meaning that when you audition, they never called it an
Hmm.
audition, uh, but when you submit to be on the show, you would make the
Mm.
next round. So round one was just you sent in a photo of yourself and a letter, and so I sent a very nice picture of myself. I wasn't an ugly person, so I was lucky, and and a letter that I made it look like I was just
Mm.
writing it out, opposed to like I had four drafts of it. I put it on stationery that had like cartoons in
Hmm.
the margin, so it
Of
looked kind of
course.
cool. And I kind of kept it short and sweet, but kind of funny. And I made the next round, which was like round two. They send you a 15-page application to fill out, and they want you to do a video. So filled out the 15-page
Hmm.
application again, trying to make it to seem jaunty, but like planning
Yeah,
every
yeah,
answer to be
yeah.
for me as funny as possible is what I was going for. Shot together a video, which was good but not too good.
It's
Brad Meltzer, my
yeah.
buddy Brad Meltzer, helped me out to shoot it. Interviewed myself, did goofy stuff. I stood on the Long Island Expressway and said, "Hi, I'm Judd Winick. I'm a cartoonist. I'm trapped on Long Island and I need help." Um,
That
which that then I made the next round, which is they interviewed you on the phone while they
mhm.
videotaped you. Videotape, by the way, this is back
Video
in the day. You had to have a camera from a
camcorder.
friend, an actual physical
Yeah,
tape that had
tape.
to be
Yep.
sent. Then I made the next round where I went into New York City and met with the producers. They interviewed me for about 2 hours at the MTV offices. The next round, and by the way, I have no prospects. I have no idea what I'm going to do with my life, and I don't want what's going to happen next. But I keep making the next round of
All
the
right.
real world, so it keeps everything keep getting put off, which is like I don't know what I'm going to do next. Let me just see if I get on the real world or not.
Let me.
That's where my life is in limbo. Like I'm thinking I might move to LA or do something. I might,
Uh,
I don't know. But right now I keep making the next round to get on a television show. And so sure enough, like a fifth round, someone followed me around with cameras for a day. And then the final round was they flew us to Los Angeles, and I got interviewed in the LA offices of MTV and
Uh-huh.
Bunim to be on the
All right.
show. So there was in January of
Mm-hmm.
1994 that they informed me that they wanted to know if I wanted to join the cast of Real World 3 San Francisco, which
Yeah.
which was like
Yeah,
winning the
right.
lottery. It
Yeah,
really
yeah, yeah.
was because
Absolutely.
it's nothing you can plan for, nothing you can figure out, nothing you can bank on. But I got really, 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 really
Yeah,
lucky.
yeah. Well, I know that they look for characters, and you're a character in the best sense, for sure. It was not only a launch pad, though, for you. You really won the lottery of life by meeting your amazing wife, Pam, which launched a heck of a lot more than
Yeah,
just a career.
yeah. No, it was supposed to be on every level. There's just supposed to be a cool, stupid thing I was going to do. Um, I mean, that is by design what the show is supposed to be. It wasn't supposed to be this heady thing that
Hmm.
changes the world. It is just supposed to, and I expected, yeah, no, and honestly, I expected very little from it per se. I mean, honestly, was hoping that maybe it would help me find some work. People would see what I do, and maybe I could get in a
Hmm.
couple of doors. And maybe if I'm lucky, I get a girlfriend.
Of course.
Not even like on the show. I was thinking like
Yeah,
afterwards,
in
after
general,
like
girls would recognize you going
you're
out. They
you're a
want to
little bit
chat.
famous now. It's the greatest small talk in the whole wide world. I mean, I thought nothing of this except it might be fun and stupid. Um, but one, I met Pam, and for those playing at home, Pam and I didn't start dating until after the show was
Hmm.
over, which is what I recommend to anybody who's ever doing a reality
Of
program.
course.
Wait till the show is
Right. Unless you're
over.
on Jersey Shore or
Um,
something.
and then,
I don't know.
well, yeah, I mean, that's also, I guess that should be mentioned that like back in the day when it was one of the, if not the earliest reality TV programs. It wasn't even called reality
Hmm.
TV back then, um, but it wasn't something that anyone thought they could make a career out of
Hmm.
just doing. You were on this show, you know. I mean, it's you have to be a pretty decent sized narcissist to want to do this program in the first place. To think that I don't have any really usable talents. I have no business necessarily being up in front of people, but I am interesting enough that I should be on a television show and people should listen to me talk. So you got to be,
Yeah.
fairly healthy ego, which again I had.
No comment. No,
But
I'm just kidding.
what it wound up being is, of course, I met Pam, and I was incredibly lucky and fortunate because that wasn't supposed to happen. And one of my housemates and roommates on the show was a young man named Pedro
Mm-hmm.
Zamora,
Yep.
who I don't think I'm speaking in hyperbole. I know I'm not speaking in hyperbole. Pedro's appearance in the real world would change the world in so
Mm-hmm.
many ways,
Yes.
and that was part of my experience. I got to be there for him and support him, and we got to help him tell his story
Mm-hmm.
in that
Mm-hmm.
way.
Yeah.
For those playing at home, Pedro was a 22-year-old AIDS educator and activist. Um, and in 1994, he was probably literally the first person that people had ever seen or met who was living with AIDS in a real way. Because in '94, this is before combination drug therapy. So if you contracted AIDS or HIV, um, you really had no form of treatment. You either lucked into not getting sick or
Mm.
you got sick. Um, and what would happen is that millions of people would finally see someone who was living with AIDS in a
Mm-hmm.
real way. Pedro he was soap
Mm-hmm.
opera handsome. He
Mm-hmm.
was charming. He was funny. He was kind, and uh, really changed the way that people viewed people living with
Mm-hmm.
AIDS.
Yeah.
Um, so again, it was supposed to be this really stupid thing.
Frivolous, just supposed to be living
Oh,
out your
yeah, it was supposed to be.
cartoon fantasy, let's say.
Yeah, no, and it wound up being this life-changing experience that I had no idea how much it would change my life. It changed my
Yeah.
life in just about every way imaginable.
Tell us a story about Pedro a little bit. I mean, everybody sort of knows, but
Well, to walk it through, not even quickly, but simply, when Pedro passed away in November of 1994, we finished filming the show in June. The show came out, enormous success.
hmm
More people had seen it than had in previous seasons. It was a huge, huge hit. Um, and with that, Pedro had everyone's attention. And with that, he was supposed to begin a lecture tour. He
hmm
was going to go around the country. He was going to talk at high schools and colleges, and actually just do what he did before. He was going to
hmm
educate the public. He was going to talk to young people about AIDS education, how to protect themselves, and actually get the real facts and also what it is to know someone who's living with AIDS.
mm
Um, but he got sick, and he'd asked me actually quite simply because he had all these dates coming up where he was going to speak at colleges, if I would fill in for him. He literally just felt bad about canceling
mm
and thought, let's try to offer a substitution. And I mean, he posed it to me that a lot of them are going to cancel, a lot of them are
mm
not going to want you to come, but
mm
some of them might agree to it. And I had
Hmm.
asked him at the time, like, well, what do I do? It's like, you talk about you.
Mm.
You talk about what's like someone for they probably have more in common than you than they do me.
Hmm.
So instead of me telling me I'm going to tell them my story, you tell them your story. Tell them who you are and tell them what it's like to know someone who's living with AIDS.
Mm.
Tell them about me. Give them basic AIDS education. It's just everything, everything you've learned from me in the last 6 months. Just talk about it.
Mm.
Every
Mm.
time I would give this talk, I would talk about the moment that Pedro died. And Pam and I and his partner Sean and Pedro's whole family were in the room there at the hospital. And I would talk about it again, the exact moment of his death, and I would put myself right back there. And it just got too emotionally hard
Mm.
walking through this experience again and again and again. It never got any easier. It never sort of lost its meaning, and it just got so hard. Um, it was actually Pam
Mm.
who told me that I probably needed to stop.
Mm.
She's the one who told me that Pedro probably wouldn't want you to keep doing this if it was so hard.
Hmm.
Um, and uh, and that's when I quit doing it.
Mhm.
Um, so jump ahead like a couple of years later,
Mhm.
with the occasional here and there that Pam and I would do a talk and
Mhm.
and do some fundraising and do whatnot.
Mhm.
I finally got a comic strip.
Mm.
I had a comic
Mhm.
strip called
All
Frumpy
right.
the Clown that was running in newspapers. I was very, very excited. Dream come true.
Yeah.
Um, and what unfortunately what was happening when I was doing it, I was finding it a little bit unsatisfying here and there.
Mhm.
I think what was nagging me is that uh, the work that I'd been doing, the lecturing that I had been doing around Pedro, it felt it felt slightly more important than doing a comic strip, which was like telling a joke in a newspaper every day. Even though I love doing a comic strip, so I toyed with the idea of trying to introduce a character like Pedro into my comic strip and somehow tell his story through there. Like it's an Uncle Peter who would come out as gay maybe, and later would test positive, and I would tell the story kind of through there. And then when I actually sat down and started like sketching out who the character would look like, and it looked much like Pedro, it just didn't feel right. It felt like it felt a little trivial. It felt like I really wasn't doing service to his story. So that's when I started toying with the idea, like, what if I take the lecture and try to turn it into a book? And at first it was like a lot of text and a few drawings and then more drawings. And then it kept evolving. And then after about 2.5 years of doing it over and over and over again, the lecture prose book with a few drawings turned into like a 250-page comic book, turned into a graphic novel.
Called Pedro and Me.
Yeah, and it was called Pedro and Me. And when I finished, I think that really solid last draft where I knew, like, okay, this is the book, I decided to stop doing the comic strip. I realized that this is how I tell stories. And as much as it was my dream from when I was a kid to do this, this is not how I want to tell stories. This is not who I am. And it took knowing Pedro and telling his story to do that for me.
Wow, that's tough. Well, thank you for retelling that again. I know you do it often and have to relive it often as well. All right, well, from a real-life hero to the ones in the colorful spandex capes that fly, tell us how you got into writing such luminaries as Green Lantern, The Exiles, some others you made up.
I got lucky. I was at no, I really did. It was I was at the San Diego Comic-Con, I think in 1996, and an editor named Bob Schreck, who had just launched his own comic book company called Oni Press. We made eye contact, and he's like, "Are you?" And I was like, "Yeah, how are you?" And then we shook hands, and I said, "You're Bob Schreck." And he goes, "Yes, I am." He said, "You're familiar?" Like, "Yeah, you're Frank Miller's editor." I know exactly who you are, Bob. And we struck up a conversation, which became a lunch, which became a friendship. Then a couple of years later, when I did one of my early drafts of Pedro and Me, I sent it to Bob, who then had Bob actually, who would become my rabbi, and I mean that in the sense like someone who always gave me the best advice. He read it and said, "Okay, I am happy to publish this through Oni Press, and we'll." I said, "I would offer you a deal today, but I want you to go and try and get this through a mainstream publisher. It should have as big an audience as possible, so try to get a mainstream publisher." And he said, "If everyone says no, then come back to me." And he was right. I took I got an agent, and we took it out, and Henry Holt published the book. But I'm circling back to, so Bob Schreck and I were friends, and I did some work for Oni Press, which was a lot of fun. But then Bob left Oni Press and went to DC Comics. And when he went to DC Comics, he gave me a call one day and said, "Do you like superheroes?" I said, "Yes, I love superheroes." He said, "Because you are the only person that I know and that I've worked with who has not called me about trying to like get something going at DC Comics." And I said, "Well, I didn't want to presume." And so Bob had read Pedro and Me and loved it. He was one of the earliest readers, and that's when he approached me and said, like, "I think you could do a really good job on Green Lantern. Do you like Green Lantern?" It's like, "Yes, I do." He said, "Okay, tell you what we're gonna do." He said, "Come up with a couple of ideas for like a story arc. Send it to me. I'm gonna send it to my boss. Then if he likes that, we'll write a couple of scripts." And he sent me a couple of scripts, and he said, "Do it like that," and that was it. So I owe that to Pedro as well. I told this story about Pedro, and my buddy Bob thought enough of it that he thought I could write superhero comics.
Wow, right on. That's awesome.
And so around 1999, 2000 is when I started doing it.
Okay.
And I started writing Green Lantern. I was very, very lucky.
And a guy who lives in a dark cave, maybe?
I did. I got to write Batman for about almost 3 years. I did an arc that it managed to have some legs. So I brought for those really nerdy fans out there,
Mm-hmm.
I brought the second Robin, Jason Todd, back to life and
Mm-hmm.
made him into a new character called the Red Hood, who's still out there and kicking around, which is a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I spent 5 years writing Green Arrow.
Mm.
I adapted my Batman story arc into an animated movie.
Mm-hmm.
It came out a bunch of gosh, over 10 years ago at this point. Yeah, it was
Wow.
called Under the Red Hood.
Okay.
I was able to, I was very, very lucky. I did my own animated series for Cartoon Network
Right, right,
for
right.
4 years called Life and Times of Juniper Lee,
Mm-hmm.
which basically it's about an 11-year-old girl who fights monsters. And the 11-year-old girl looks just like Pam. That was a lot
Yep.
of fun. Um, and uh, and it's again, I spent about 5 years developing live action TV,
Uh-huh.
none of which got on the air. So this transition was I did superhero comics for a number of years,
Mm-hmm.
did an animated series. The animated series eventually got canceled.
Hmm.
We had 4 good seasons and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But then oh no, it wasn't, and I learned a whole lot about TV, and I also learned that like, you know what, let me try to do live action TV,
Huh.
and I actually I made a lot of traction in the sense that I was pitching shows and almost got a lot of stuff on the air,
Mm-hmm.
developed this, sold a little bit of that, nothing
Mm-hmm.
actually happened, but in those 5 years where I was still writing superhero comics and trying to get a live action television show on the air,
Mm-hmm.
I stopped drawing for a while,
Mm.
and I didn't realize how deeply unhappy that was making me
Hmm.
until I realized until I realized it. I guess I
Oh,
was a more finer point.
yeah.
It was after about 5 years. I was coming up on yet another season where my manager said, "Well, okay, we're coming up on pitch season, so you're gonna have to
Hmm.
come up with a new show
Mm-hmm.
for you to take out." And this was kind of always going to be my year that
Mm.
I'd spend 2 or 3 months developing a pitch for a show. Then I'd go out, I would pitch producers and whatnot. Someone would eventually go for it. Then we'd go to networks and try and sell it. And then it would
Yep.
either die at the network meetings or
Mm-hmm.
I'd get a little bit of development money and nothing would happen. Then I'd start over the next year. And this was the year that I said, yeah, I don't want to do that. It's like, what are you going to do? It's like, I think I want to sit down and I think I want to write a graphic novel again. I think I want to write and draw something because
All right.
I am deeply unhappy right now.
Mm-hmm.
And right around this time, so it was about a decade ago, my son, who was 7 at the time, wanted to read my Batman comics that I'd written. He was getting into it, and I told him my Batman comics. Oh no, you may not read my Batman comics. You are
No,
7,
no.
and there's a lot of dead parents and
Yeah.
shooting people, and it's kind of intense. It's mostly for teenagers and
Yeah.
grown-ups.
Intense.
So poked around for a series that I thought would be fun for him, and the one that he really, really dug was Jeff Smith's series Bone.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
And he loved it. My son went nuts for Bone. I know Jeff Smith, the cartoonist who does Bone. I told Jeff, my son loves Bone. Jeff sent us a gigantic box of Bone merchandise.
Mm.
So my son had the T-shirts and action figures and calendars, and just like lost his mind for Bone. And I got a little bit jealous
Pa.
how much he loved Bone. And that's when I thought, like, man, I should try to do a series for kids. I should try to do a series that my son would like as much as Bone. And that's how High Low started.
All
I didn't
right.
do the thing that people do now. I didn't put together a submission. I just did the book. I actually just sat down and wrote and drew a 200 and some odd page graphic novel,
Mm-hmm.
and found a new literary agent who loved it, and she sent it out to publishers. And again, I was lucky enough that one of the publishers was a small independent publisher called Random House.
Okay, Mr. Good and Lucky, what advice do you have for people who are perhaps a little more shy or less confident with regards to pursuing their dreams like that?
I mean, a lot of the old chestnuts are true. Like if you
Mm-hmm.
want to, like, if you want to write a book, you have to go write a book. There's so many times that people are asking about like what's your process, thinking that if you drink an energy shot and meditate for half an hour, and then watch 45 minutes of The West Wing. You're on your road to writing a
Yeah.
novel. There's no tricks as much as like you have to find your own way of like how you're going to make something. But there is the old adage, you're just going to have to do it. And keep in mind that you are going to get your head kicked in, and a lot of your work's going to be bad at first. And it's okay for it to be bad. You know, I started early, so like I had a lot of crappy comic strips and rotten cartoons, you know, in my later teen years and through my 20s, and then I got pretty good at it and good enough that I could make a living almost doing it. Sometimes you got to accept work that you don't love, like the spot illustration work that I did for years, which paid okay. And I was drawing stuff and making things up. It was anywhere near what I was ever going to do. But also knowing at some point that it might come a point where I might have to quit or get fired. I guess part of it, if you can't do it when you're young, which a lot of people listening aren't going to be able to, the young people, I say, like, go out now and do it now and fail now.
Yeah.
Try as hard as you can right now. Do everything you possibly can. Get those doors slammed in your face. Jump off that cliff. You got to do it now. And it's like, because later you might have responsibilities and you can't do it. But if you do have those responsibilities, what you need to do is you need to carve out that time in your life so you can actually try to do it, and be prepared for it not to be good. Being prepared for it not to be good, it is like exercise.
Yeah.
I don't think sometimes people grasp the literal sort of like one-for-one comparison you could make between getting yourself physically in shape and as well as like putting yourself on the path to do something. But you got to want it. You got to keep doing it. And at some point you're going to start seeing results. That's the thing. It's the old adage about, you know, you got to put the time in, and if you put the time in, it's, you know, you're going to see the results. And the magic of doing stuff, and when you finally see results, is just that wonderful endorphin rush and euphoria of when you've actually like done something that feels substantive. I mean, you know, I have most days when I'm writing, when I'm coming up with stuff, when I'm making stuff, you know, a lot of it isn't good. And I feel, you know, and I don't have imposter syndrome as much, but it's more about like, is it going to come together this time? And then I'll write something or come up with something that's funny or good. And then it's like, I am God's most perfect creature. This is just like, man. And you're just loving life, and it fuels you throughout that. So you just got to work through until you find that.
Yeah, I think that's great advice for any situation or job or endeavor, really. It's not so much about taking shit and dealing with it, but going through a process. It's often tough and has lots of ups and downs, you know? So how do most people approach you at conventions or on the street?
Most people who are coming up for advice basically want to make stories, want to write books, want to do something along the lines of like, you know, sometimes it's a picture book, sometimes it's a novel, sometimes it's a graphic novel. Like, how do I go about that? You know, I do have some very simple storytelling advice. It's the same advice I give children, which is everybody has their big idea, like, and everyone gets excited about their big idea. Like, you know, I got this crazy idea. I love it. You know, so it's like, it's about this French bulldog who speaks Spanish, whose best friend is a talking plant, and they find a time machine. I've been thinking about this story forever, and I'm so excited. It's like great.
Yeah.
And then they'll start working on that story, and eventually they'll run out of steam. And that's because everyone's got the big idea. What I tell them is like, work really, really, really hard and think of your ending.
Okay.
Know how your story is going to end. Even if it's not a good ending, know how it's going to finish up. Because in that way, you will finish your first draft. You'll finish your story.
Gotcha.
You have to, it's the idea of like going for a walk and not knowing where you're going. You will leave your house and go for a walk, and then you will get tired and go home. My advice is don't go home. Know where you're going. So if you have an ending to your story, then you can plow through, even if it's crap, even if the middle doesn't sort of make sense, even if you run into trouble, just get to the end. And once you have that first draft done, then you're in the 90th percentile. I mean, then you've done more than most. You've actually finished it. Yeah. And then you can go back and fix it. Then you can go back and share it. You can show other people. You have something substantive you can get out there. And that's often what I tell
Yeah.
people. If you want to make something up, go make it up, but finish it. Finish that first time.
Yeah, again, pertinent to things well beyond storytelling and being creative, you know? People quit, they give up, they turn around, not for me, and whatever. But if you have that dream, got to keep going.
Yeah, you just got to try to get to the end of it as much as you possibly can. Get to the end of the scene as much as you possibly can.
Yeah, get to the end of the scene. For as much fun as it's been, I think we'll do the old end scene here and let folks get on to their sketchbooks and journals and long walks and what have you. Uh, we appreciate your storytelling here, Judd. On all the colorful paper you've filled up over the years. You're the first creative guru we've had on, so thank you. Thank you for that. Much appreciated. And yeah, your professional perspective on how to really channel that creativity is cool. It's awesome. It's a whole nother aspect to life that many people take either for granted or just don't know how to pursue. So thanks. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.